director for the Austin market for the Texas Restaurant Association. Happy to see some familiar faces come in throughout the day. Getting started. Thank you guys so much for coming out and being on our panel. Building a successful restaurant brand takes more than great food. It requires a clear identity, consistent messaging, creative marketing, and an exceptional guest experience. Today's panel brings together experts in restaurant operations, branding, marketing, and creative strategy to discuss what it takes to build brands that stand out in today's competitive marketplace. Please welcome Chris Tripoli of the Restaurant Clinic, Kim Beechner, owner and CEO of Embark Marketing, Don Arcieri, founding principal and executive vice president of creative services at Sparrow Studio, and David Tripoli, founder and principal of Trulux Restaurant Group.
No. Yeah. Hello.
I'm from the Restaurant Clinic.
Yeah. And thank you so much for coming. I am going to conduct the train here, take you guys on a little ride through Brandsville. We're going to talk about brand by definition, brand by development, and we're going to be talking about brand, how you manage your current brand. And that's the reason why we've got three really good experts in branding, from a marketing perspective, from a design perspective, and from an operations perspective. That guy in the middle, who I've known all his life, is my brother David Tripoli, who was for a very long time, 20 some years I think, the COO of the Trulux Restaurant Group. However, for the last 4 years has been actively doing business development work, consulting for a group that he founded, Austin-based, the Restaurant Clinic. You can learn more about that by checking out therestaurantclinic.com. Dawn, who I've also known for 40 or some years, which I find kind of interesting that she says she's been a professional designer for 40 years, meaning that I think we just celebrated her 45th birthday like a year ago. But we are Sparrow Studio, is a design studio that is designated for total design of restaurant, bars, and hotels. Based in Texas, work everywhere. Kim Beechner, as you heard, is our marketing expert. And for 15 years, she's been the founder and the leader of a team right here in San Antonio, Embark Marketing. You can check out Embark Marketing, by the way, because they're on 1537, I think is their booth number. Go by, check it out, fantastic stuff. She and her team specialize in telling the story, developing the message, and helping today's restaurants with their marketing, their PR, and their digital marketing. So let's get this train started. I think the first stop is going to be helping us define our brand, learning what we think it's supposed to be from the customer point of view. Many of you may have had the same kind of conversation I've had. Over my years in this industry, I've sat with many, many restaurant operators. We're having a cup of coffee and I'm saying, so how do you think your brand is understood by your guest? The answers have come from anything from, you know what, we're doing a much better job now because we're spending more on advertising. Okay. Or I'll hear, we're paying a little attention to updating our brand because we're shopping now for some new chairs. We're going to do a little repainting on the inside, also nice. Okay. Or I'll hear, I've got my ops team paying more attention to the brand experience because we think we'll update the menu. So my first question for our illustrious panel is going to be, please fill in the blank. Is brand really look design? Is it how we operate and present our menu? Is it all in the story that we're telling? And we're going to give them each a chance now to talk about how they see what they think your guest is looking for in a brand. Let's start with design on the end. Go, Dawn.
Well, that wasn't fair.
Okay, thank you very much.
But it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Start with you.
Well, there's not a specific design, I don't think, that you can say represents your brand and like what is today's design. I think design is always.
You lost your.
I lost my.
There you go.
Well,
There
we'll
you
just
go.
do this. So, I mean, it's. Yes, you start with design, but I think it's more. You start with what is the story? What is your story? I don't know.
I think we're having a problem. Here, how about
And your
this?
mic.
I think it's. Now we're gonna do it. Okay, one of these days we'll get it. Hopefully I design better than I speak at this point. But it's really more about, understanding what is your goal, what is your story when you're starting. And then creating that design based on that. So just because XYZ design works for your neighbor doesn't mean that's what's going to work for you. You need to understand who you are first. And I think that's sit down. I don't know what to tell you guys. I can holler. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so I think it's again, it's not just what your neighbor's doing, or there's one kind of design that says to you, oh, this is the right design, we should always do this, so and so does this, so that works for them and that's going to work for us. That's not how it works. It's really understanding what it is you're trying to present and being able to share that with your design professional. That design professional needs to understand who your target market is. What's your overall ambiance? What is it that you're looking to do, and who are you trying to serve? And then we can create that story behind that brand. So that's what I would offer up. Sorry about all that.
Okay, am I on that? Okay, great. No, I'm not?
Okay, so operationally, what's the guest expecting?
Yeah.
What do you do?
I concur with what Don was saying, and that as an operator, and especially if you're starting out a new brand, my recommendation is work with design, your creative people, and put together your concept definition. A lot of times we work with our clients and we ask, who's your customer? Well, everybody. No, that's not going to work. No. What is it that defines your concept? Well, what do you mean? What is it that you are going to provide that is best, better, and different than the rest of the market? Define who it is you are, what you want to be, and what does that look like? Close your eyes if you have to, and picture, this is what my restaurant property should be. I want to be a modern day steakhouse. My target market is 35 to 55. I'm in a market that has disposable income, because household incomes are about 120,000 to 200,000 per household. Define what it is you want to deliver to the guest, and what is it that's going to be your signature. If you can communicate that type of vision to design, then design really refines that concept definition to then tell your story through how it looks. I'm off again, right? Okay. Yeah, the finishes of your restaurant, everything. Story, light. You have to be able to do that. Great in the sound booth. I mean, jeez.
Okay, let's give it a shot from how the marketing works. We've kind of rolled into needs and requirements for the creation process. So let's keep it going. What are the needs? What's the process that marketing takes a look at?
Okay, so this has been kind of hard to follow, yeah? So let's kind of just take it back for a second. We're talking about branding, right? I'm working in the marketing space, and what I commonly find with restaurants is they don't know who they are, and they don't know who their target demographic is and what they want. And so I think the biggest takeaway here from a design and an operation and a marketing perspective is that you have to dig down deep and understand, who are you and what are you trying to convey in your restaurant. If you've heard from any of the speakers today, it's about the vibe today. What do people want to experience when they go into your restaurant? It's not just about the food and the drink, it's also about the experience. And you really need to understand that, because that starts with design of the restaurant, how it looks and how it makes a guest feel. And then from an operational perspective, how are you going to train your staff to convey that feeling and that message that you want your guests to experience? And then to understand all of that, and then move to the marketing piece so that we can amplify that messaging. But I think a common thing that we find is that restaurateurs come in and they've lost who they are, or they're not sure exactly who they are. And it's really good to do that self-reflection before you start the marketing, because then our job is to amplify that through all of the different tools in your tool belt.
I think if I
Good
could
points.
add to
Keep
that.
going, because we're still in the creation process here, and I'd love to have you guys amplify on how does it come together. You know, from what we're supposed to be doing. Then, if that's what we need to do, because that's what the guests expect, how does it come together to get created properly?
I think to touch on your point too is that a key word you said was experience, and that is your job. You all are creating the experience, and we are then interpreting what it is you're trying to create, whether it's through visual, through operation, through marketing. But at the end of the day, people are not just coming to your restaurant to eat, they're coming to your restaurant to have an experience. And they leave with that. The reason they come back is because this feels good to me. This is where I like to come for my birthday. This is where I come for my anniversary. This is where I like to come 3 times a week because I'm just comfortable here, or I enjoy the experience. It's what you're providing to them. And once we understand what it is, what are we trying to do? Who is our demographic, as you said? Who is our target audience? Then I, as a design professional, can explain that in a visual way to your customer, or to represent what it is, who you are, what your concept is through a visual means. And it's not just my furniture, my carpet. It is me creating an experience based on what it is you've told me you are trying to do. So it's a little bit more than, oh, I've got a mural on the wall, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. It is the environment in which you're in, and do you feel comfortable in that environment? What is my goal with my environment? Is it that it's quick serve and I want them in here and out of here? Is it that I want them to spend 2 or 3 hours here? You know, what is it? Who are you, as you were saying? So that's what I would add to that conversation.
Along those lines, going back to what we talked about earlier, is when she said you all, that means the operators, we're responsible for then delivering on what it is we said we were going to do. And so as the operators, you have to decide what my concept is, what my concept definition is. And again, your point of difference is, I mean, go through this show. There's a lot of competition. Boy, look at that beverage aisle. Everybody's in the beverage business. Do we really need another vodka? Do we need more sparkling waters? Well, you know, that's how it is with restaurants too. There's so many restaurants out there. So what's going to make the customer come to you instead? When you define what that's going to be, you're going to provide the best seafood experience. You know, what again, do you do best, better, and different? And once you do that in the environment that you're trying to create, because that's where the feeling comes from, marketing will then exploit that to create the anticipation for them to come to your restaurant for that experience. But as the operator, you have to then deliver what it is you're selling. That's the chance. So you have to define what it is you're going to be able to do, and then back it up with your people, your product, and your training to deliver what it is you're putting out there. And don't bite off more than you can chew.
I think that leads right into your development process.
Yeah, I was going to say, so if I'm sitting out there, and maybe there are some people thinking, okay, this is sounding good, because I'm sitting here with maybe my partner, we've got an idea, we're ready to get something started, or, you know, we're going to expand on our concept by maybe doing a different one. How do we start? How do we put these dominoes in a row? What's the development process to make my idea come to a reality and have the proper brand? How do you 3 fit together, in other words? Who goes?
I feel like that lends to marketing. Like, the next step is we need our branding, we need our logo, our colors, our fonts. To me, when I think about digital presence, it's the table touch that you do in-house, but in the virtual space. They're looking at you online before they ever hit your door and hit the table. So I want to make sure that we have a branding kit, a logo, a color, a font that conveys how it feels to be inside of the restaurant. And then also messaging, copy. I know it seems boring to sit down and write that, but work work on the business at least one day a month instead of in the business, and think about those deeper thoughts, because what you do with operations and internal and the way the restaurant looks and feels absolutely needs to be conveyed in a digital space too, so that guests understand what they're going to experience when they walk through your doors. So many restaurants that I meet with don't have branding, don't have logos and colors, and then I'm trying to figure out, well, does this font feel sexy or elegant or chunky or like a barbecue restaurant? Like, all of those things matter and they have feelings, and unfortunately I don't think restaurants value that as much as they should, and that's part of creation, and then that's part of development.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think where marketing comes into play is at the very beginning, in terms of do a market study. Know the market you're in, know your market demographics, learn your competition, who's doing what customer you're going for, where's that customer now? You're not just going to invent customers. Where are you going to take them from? Why would they come to you? All of that data will help you define who you are. And then as you get with design and you build your style guide, all of what Kim just explained has to be congruent. With your style guide, your color, your feeling, the design does.
I think you have to know your point of difference, as you're saying. I think what a lot of people may mistake for brand is just a logo and your typography, and that is not a brand. That is part of your brand, but that is not a brand. So oftentimes I'll talk to a restaurateur and they'll say, well, but I have my branding. I have a brand. I don't need help with design. But your logo isn't your brand. That is a piece of your brand. Your brand is really what all of us do in order to create that experience. As I go back to that word, and I'm sorry, but it is what it is. You know, you want to create that full brand. And so it's more than that. I think when we develop, you need to understand your operations. You said, Chris, like, which one comes first? I don't think any of us come first. It's a group. It's all of us together. I think your marketing and your logo needs to be talking to your designer who's now trying to create the interior so that it's all making sense. And how am I going to operate this? If we're counter service, we need to understand that. I need to understand it from a design point, how I'm laying out your space. You know, if you're counter service, that's different from full service. You need to understand, like you said, is it sexy? Is it, you know, is it joyful?
We want to get them out.
Yeah. Is it? So I think I can't say that there's one that comes before the other. I believe that it's a congruent, consistent togetherness, if you will.
And see, and I think that's the big point, because I'm not really sure if we as operators understand that. When we're developing. So that's what I'm hearing. The key point here is that the development process really may need to start with defining our goals, our customer profile, the market segment data, the market research, as was mentioned. Then once we're excited by that and we think we know this is what we want to do, this is what winning looks like, this is who my customer is, then we got to take it to a team. Because if design knows how it can work and flow and size and look, and how ops knows how we can make it, execute, and marketing knows how the story will fit, then I think you're developing a good brand. And I think that was one of the points that we wanted to make when we were talking earlier, is because I think too much of the time as an operator, we got too far along in the development process. We've already found our location, we've got decisions made, but we haven't really done this research, concept definition, and taken it to the team. So now we expect designers to design in a vacuum. The ops guys are going to start on the menu and start hiring people. Then we're going to go talk to marketing later and say, what kind of advertising do I need? And there was no team, there was no flow, which I've learned means we didn't really do a brand development process. Does that make sense? Okay, let's turn the page now. How about for those who are sitting here that aren't developing? Hey, you've got your units. We're operating. Our brand is in motion every day. We never really sit still. Whether you've been operating for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, 8 years. How do we continue to know our guest and how our guest might be changed? Is there a process? What kind of data do we need to do in order to keep up and move our brand? What's the guest's role in this? Do we do research, market research? Do we do focus groups? What's management and staff's role? How do we get staff's buy-in if we are going to be updating, changing, and moving the brand? So this is a huge category. I want to spend some time on it. And by the way, if any of the things that we're talking about are ringing a bell, light bulbs are blinking, make note of that, because all three of the presenters wanted to make sure we would stop in time to hear comments and answer your questions. So let's go down the line now. What are you telling your existing people who are existing operators, your clients, the process they need to stay on top of their branding?
I think from a marketing perspective for our brands that are already in motion, already existing, kind of going back and having that conversation about who are you and who are you trying to reach, and does your existing operations and design fit who you're trying to target. But the biggest tool that I'm finding right now that a lot of restaurateurs I think aren't leveraging as much as they should be is their POS data. So one of the biggest things that we do is look inside of Toast, inside of Square, and see what day parts are moving, what is happening in the PMix report, what are people buying, to better understand what the consumer already likes from our brand, and then embrace that or lean into that. If we see that NA sales are going up, well then let's put more NA cocktails on our menu. And so I can see that maybe that's more of an operation thing, but it 100% impacts marketing. We need to know what's happening operationally, and if you're not looking at those numbers, you should be. From a marketing perspective, it helps us to better do our job and actually move the needle if we understand what's happening inside of the business.
That's terrific, Kim, because marketing wants to sell what you're operating successfully. So step one, I'm just going to share a couple of what I find to be common instances with clients sometimes is, first and foremost, you have to listen. Be a great listener. Your customers are talking to you every single day. That data that's on your POS, tracking your customer count. Traffic is what turns into sales. If your traffic is dropping, that's the customer saying something to you. They're rejecting something. Track your PPA, your per person averages. That's what the customer values you at. That's what they're willing to spend with you. Look at your product mix. Your product mix is telling you what sells, what doesn't sell. That tells you how does the customer use you. That's the information you want marketing to know so they know how to sell you. The most common mistake, and I think all three of us will repeat, I'll just throw it out first, is too many operators throw out in the marketplace what they like. And it's too narrow. As an owner, as an operator, no, it's not about you. It never will be. It's about your customer. So you have to be able to give them what they want, not what you like. So you have to kind of broaden your scope. And Chris mentioned this earlier, that it's constant. And Kim also mentioned this. It never ends. You have to continually work on the business. From growing from one location to 13 locations over a 25-year period with slow growth. The restaurant that we opened in 1992 and the restaurant that's operated in 2022 is completely, or 2026, 2022 is when I left, completely different, because you have to continually improve. You have to continually listen to your customer, and you have to give them what they want, and your customer demographic is going to change. If you've been around for 10 years and your target market was 45 to 55 and you're not speaking to the new 45-year-old, you're already behind. You're going to start losing traffic because that 45-year-old wants something different than they did before. In that modern steakhouse, no longer do you see red leather booths, white tablecloths, carpet on the floors. That screams my dad's Smirnoff vodka. Nobody wants that. So you have to stay current with your new customers coming in and listen. That POS data will tell you a lot.
I think it's different from a design standpoint. I think a lot of times you've created your unit, you say you have your design and but that's my design and that's what I'm going to do forever. So you may have started with your one unit, but your fifth unit's not the same as your first unit. You've evolved, and the design needs to evolve with that. And I think so many times we think, oh well, I'm just going to reupholster the booths and that's my new thing. And you have to keep up with, like you're saying, who your clientele is. So that needs to evolve too. I think you have to think about just how you might recreate yourself after you're in unit 5 or unit 6 and compare it to unit 1 and what's working, what's not working. Maybe the flow of the restaurant is completely different. Maybe you started as a counter service, but now you're not. Counter service isn't what we're doing. Now we're full service. Well, your restaurant that you designed and the flow that we designed and the kitchen that we designed for you is no longer working because you're not that anymore. So it's just, it evolves like everything else. You have to review it and keep up with it. I think a lot of times when we become complacent about the design, your customer sees that. If you don't care what your space is looking like and you're not keeping up with it, they're thinking, why should we care? It speaks volumes when you're not invested enough in your own space to keep up with it. And it doesn't always have to be a $1 million spend again, if that's what you spent on the first one, but it's just evolving it. I mean, it's understanding your market. It's knowing that, okay, we're getting ready to open unit number 10. What can we do to make it somewhat different, but not depart completely? So it's understanding how to do that, to give them a little bit more, or maybe it's a little bit less in this case, and understand that it needs to evolve as you evolve. I always go back to clothes because I have a love for that, but you're not wearing 10 years ago what you wore 10 years ago, right? Like that's not what's speaking to you. That's not what's on trend. There are staples that you're going to wear forever. Those are those pieces that you're going to keep the rest of your life, but you're pairing it with something else. It's the same with design. Your basics are there, but maybe you need to spruce it up just a little bit. Or again, like I say, if your model has changed, then you need to look at a totally different model for your space as well.
That's interesting. I've never looked at it in comparison to fashion.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Maybe it's because I'm, still wearing the same jeans that I have worn 10 years ago. But I don't know. I mean, that's just me.
That is not true, Chris, and I know that about you.
So let's look at a process for this then. If we have 1 or 2 units, and is there a certain timetable, if we're a full service restaurant, that we should say every, fill in the blank, there should be enough different about our customer or about trends that we should then get our team together and do some conceptual update?
6 to 10.
What we looked at was about every 6 to 7 years. Because we knew that if we were looking at doing updates and changes, to implement them properly, that would take a good chunk of time. So whether it was updating the room, updating colors, we changed the logo several times, we changed our descriptors several times, fonts. You have to speak to your customer the way they want to be spoken to, and that certainly has changed over the years. There used to be a time where marketing would do, advertising and print. Oh my, who knows? Those old days of magazines or radio spots or things that you don't do anymore. So as you were evolving to that customer, you have to change your look and your feel. So if you start working on it every 6 to 7 years, by year 8, you might be where you need to be. And a good segment to study, believe it or not, is fast food will update. Wendy's will update their look and get an 8 to 10% bump, and they do it in about
I find that
8 years
so
cycles.
interesting. So from both operational and design, you're saying between 6 and 8 years, an update, and up to a 10 to 12% increase in sales from just an update.
If it's done properly, and when they do it, they'll roll that out.
That's
because
so awesome.
it creates interest. But again, there's a planning process. If you go to work on it year 6 and 7, you put it in play year 8, you're staying with where the market trends are. Because if your customer demo is a 30-year, group, this end of the customer is falling off, and you got to bring this customer in.
So I find that interesting because from a marketing perspective, I feel like on an annual basis, we're trying to change the language that we're using on social and email marketing and text message marketing to try and gear towards the demographic, because trends change, language change, slang changes. Can't even understand what half the things people are saying now. So I feel like we're ebbing and flowing in the digital space, but I hadn't thought about how that translates to the physical space and how you have to kind of catch up to us.
Your space moves a lot quicker than our space, and especially now with social media. And I've been in this industry for a very long time, so, and it's totally different now than it used to be. But social media changes weekly, monthly. There's a new trend on Instagram always, right? There's some other new thing that's going on, and you'll see people's social media will start following trends. So you have to be way ahead of the change. It's not so much, I mean, you're not going to change weekly, monthly for your design. There's too much investment in that, for one thing. So, but there, interestingly enough, and for me, I do everything from quick serve to, 5-star Michelin. But I did a ton of McDonald's. And one thing I can say about McDonald's is that there are specific markers that they have their franchisees, or they call them owner-operators, that they have to do. That, at year 4, you have to do this. At year 6, you have to do this. At year 10, you're tearing your place down and rebuilding a McDonald's. They don't leave them that long. So there is a progression. I think there's something to learn from them, whether they're fast food or they're not, but they're still relevant. I mean, McDonald's is a mainstay still, and they evolve. But the way they approach their renovation is very systematically, and I think that a lot of times we don't think about that as maybe a single operator, or maybe I just have 2 units, but it's the same sort of principles, I think, are appropriate for even a fine dining situation.
Sure.
So, just knowing that it's not, there are those 2 years maintenance, okay, I need to fix the booths, I need to redo that, but then there are the 4 and the 5-year points where, okay, maybe I need to update my brand.
And I just want to underline that point for everybody, because it was really valid that sometimes part of our brand management is on a different schedule. Because to Kim's point, marketing does move quicker, say, than facility improvement. So if we're an operator who really wants to increase our brand value and really wants to be on top of our customer, but if we don't have you mentioned a year, an annual marketing plan that is done in connection with operations, then we're probably failing that point. Every year, maybe you could comment on this, you guys, on how that works, how you get together to say, in order to inform our customer best, this is the type of annual marketing we should be doing. What are the seasonal things we should be pushing? What events do we want to plan? What will it cost? Who's going to be responsible? That, to me, isn't just note-taking or an ops budget. That's managing the brand. Am I right?
I 100% agree with that. I think most restaurants don't have an annual marketing calendar, and when we first started working with any kind of restaurant, I lend towards operations. So 2 different things. One, looking at their POS system for every major holiday, every major thing that they did in the last year to see what worked, what sells, did it actually move the needle for the amount of effort that we put into it. And if it did, then let's recreate that and make it better and try to beat the numbers from the year before. And then if I see a slow month, then it's like, okay, I know that that's naturally going to happen because it's the ebb and flow of the way our sales cycle is. So what do I need to do that's extra in that month to try and attract guests to get them through the door, because I already know that it's going to be a low sales volume month in anyways. So there's that piece of looking at the operations to discern what are we going to do as our annual marketing strategy. And then each month you should be looking at your marketing 30, 60, and 90 days in advance, because
there we go.
most guests need to see your brand and your message 3 to 7 times. And you sending your marketing team a flyer to throw up about the World Cup game tomorrow is not going to move the needle. But if we were to create a whole campaign about World Cup watch parties and we were ahead of that shit a month in advance, well then yeah, maybe I can move the needle. So giving your team time to get the messaging out means you need to plan 30, 60, 90 days operationally what you're going to do that impacts marketing. I think that's so important. I hope you take that away and do it.
Just what Kim's touching on is really a cornerstone of how to be successful in our industry right now. Because I know we're talking about a brand, but know this, you never will have a brand if you first don't have a business. So operate your business, treat it as a business, and that will build your brand. Soft planning 90 days out, committing 60 days out, being able to implement 30 days out, having that marketing, it may sound like a lot of work. And I'm not going to say it's really that simple, but when you work with professionals, it is. And I'm going to because an annual marketing plan isn't that hard. I'm going to sound a little like Nostradamus here, but I can tell you when Valentine's Day is next year. I can tell you when Mother's Day is. I can tell you when Halloween, Thanksgiving, New Year's Eve, and Christmas is. Even Christmas Eve. It's not that difficult, but you have to have the operational disciplines to build and operate your business to do it. Also, as an operator, in order to stay current, at least twice a year, you want to do menu engineering, pricing strategy, and update your menu. Some of the biggest promotions that work well are limited time offerings. You have this special for this month, and that doesn't have to be just in food, that should be in beverage also. Look at the craze of dirty sodas going on. I've got a client in Canada that doesn't sell alcohol, but boy, their sales are screaming with all the dirty soda offers that they can do at their location. And as you update that, there could be seasonal specials. So, we're in an industry that doesn't move as fast as tech, but if you're not continually improving, operating your business, keeping your eye on the ball, it will pass you by. Once it passes you by, it's much more expensive in marketing to get them back. So we have to deliver and operate a business in order to successfully build a brand.
Is there, maybe you guys could think of something that, an example where it works. When a brand that's out there that maybe independents can learn from, where the messaging with the operational decisions and modifications to design is working. Anybody have anything?
26 successful growth quarters at Chili's. 26. Average unit volumes are up by $2 million. They were going the wrong direction, and they tried to be everything to everybody. And when the new board took place and Kevin took over, they sat in a room and asked themselves, what did we like when we used to go to Chili's? And they brought back, they are doing better by doing less. They invested in training and took the Zioskov tables and actually went back to serving the guest, which creates the experience that was taken away. They understood who they were. They took a menu item like the 3 for Me, and that was their value messaging. And it was, get this, a burger, something they started with years ago. It wasn't, fajitas and everything else. And by doing so, they've now reached a market that they didn't have. They also seem to be really doing well, and this one shocks me, but they brought out Chili's swag. You can go online and buy Chili's swag, and it's a big deal with college kids and in their dorm rooms having a Chili's bedspread. Who knew? It was also the number one gift card that our boys wanted when they were in college. They always asked for a Chili's gift card because most of their buddies would want to go. But you can't sneeze at 26 consecutive quarters of growth.
No. So there we go. So if we were to make sure that we had a really good annual plan, that operations and design, and then consistent messaging, because that's the thing that I see there too, consistent messaging, then it works. Those are principles that we could all, I think, implement. I think we're getting down to the last 10 minutes. So,
they also updated to reach that audience, like their new Baby Back Rib jingle is sung by Lizzo. So they're smart.
Yeah. Okay, so it's your turn. We've got 10 minutes, I think, only. And so comments on what our panel's been talking about, questions you might want them to address, please.
Hey guys. Oh, sorry. Is that better? You guys talked about that 6 and 7 year mark. First comment, second question. Y'all are completely on par. We've been open 5 years, we've been open 6 years. Year 5, we changed all of our stuff on the wall. Year 6, we're now about to start renovating the restaurant a little bit, taking those little steps. So hearing that timeline gave me so much confidence and like, all right, I'm doing the right thing. We're on timelines. But we're going through an expansion right now. Instead of doing a food truck and then doing a brick and mortar, I worked out a deal with a truck park, so I'm going from a brick and mortar to doing a food truck. I was so scared to change my logo, go for that food truck energy vibe, graffiti art, the whole thing. We've only been open 3 months. What would be the plan of attack to make those changes subtly, all at once, 3 months from now? What would be your advice on getting to that point?
Is your advice asking how do you translate a brick and mortar brand to a food truck?
Pretty much. And then is there a design change that takes place to where because it's a smaller menu, same brand, it's still sauce, pizza, and smash burgers. I'm doing slices at the truck with smash burgers instead of full pizzas, but I want to go a little bit more energetic and edgy and not
So
sit
I've
down.
seen it done both ways. So there's been several brands that I've worked with, especially in the Houston market, that have either started as food trucks and then moved to brick and mortar, or were brick and mortar and then moved to food trucks, because as things became more expensive to run a brick and mortar, it was like, fuck it, let's do a food truck.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, right? But the branding stayed the same. We just made the atmosphere, the vibe at the food truck feel a little bit different, and conveyed that through the same Instagram though. So if you're going for like a date night, then maybe you want to go to my sit down restaurant. But if you're like, oh, it's 2 a.m. and I want to grab a really good smash burger on the way home from the bar, then you want to go to our food truck concept. But they share the same branding so that you don't have to spend more money on
So I'm doing it
multiple
right. I
units.
got the same branding going.
I think
All
so.
right.
Y'all are talking about this 6 and 7 year time window, but from a budgetary standpoint, maybe this is more a David question, since you were at Trulux for so long. Would you recommend upfront on their P&L planning ahead and having a certain dollar amount they're allocating every dollar of revenue? They're kind of siphoning off to the side. So when that 6-7 years comes in and Don comes in and recommends a $500,000 facelift to the business, and Kim wants to redo the marketing, they're not having to take out a bank loan or figure out how they're going to finance it. Instead, they kind of have like a little safety net off to the side. You recommend as an idea, and if so, is there a ratio of dollar revenue or dollar profit you would recommend having that coffer?
That is such a great question and such a great point. And it's terrific. What we did was a 10% of our EBITDA set aside in capital expense fund. And we had to do that for several reasons, not just for the physical plant, but there's going to be those times where there's going to be equipment that needs to be replaced out, HVAC, depending on what your arrangement is with your landlord, just regular wear and tear, as well as having that budget plan. Now, we may still, in a remodel, depending on how much we were going to do, spend a little bit more, but at least we had that stockpiled to say, here's what we need to do. So that's a great question.
Yeah, I think so too. I think a lot of times when you're thinking about CapEx, you're not thinking about that physical maintenance, right? You're thinking about, oh, I've got a hood that went out, or my fryer, or what have you, and you're thinking about those things. You're not thinking about the actual atmosphere and the design as well. So when you're thinking about CapEx, to answer your question, yes, you should be putting that aside, knowing that you need to do that upgrade.
I'd like to add one last parting shot, because I see this as operators a bunch. Design creates a wonderful atmosphere, and marketing is going to create terrific expectations, and operations has to deliver on that. But when I go into restaurants, when I work with our clients, the area that they seem to miss is music. And music sets the emotional connection to the dining experience. And people want to hear, a restaurant is supposed to be about a sense of belonging, right? Community, and you want that person to feel comfortable. play recognizable music. Doesn't have to be loud volume. Your music formatting is so important. What's played at lunch is different than what's played at happy hour, which can be a little bit more up-tempo and fun, which may be down a little bit during dinner, and then late night can be more current. But depending on your age group, play music that customer is going to identify with. Because you used the word vibe before, and the music does provide energy in it, into that environment, because everything needs to fit. A restaurant is like a million little details that comes together, and we tend to seem to miss the music. And nothing's more exciting as an operator walking the floor and watching. I love it when customers share their food and they're smiling and sharing glasses. That's always great. But when a customer goes, "That's my jam," I know I got them. I know they're having a good time. That's important.
It all goes back to that very beginning where we say you're creating the experience. So the marketing's going to get you recognizable. The design may make them feel good and bring them there, but it's the operations that are going to keep them there. It's how you treat your people, how you treat your customers. So I can bring them, but I can't keep them. So it's, again, all of us working together, you understanding that, understanding your team and what you're creating and what the experience is. And if it's not working, pivot. Figure it out. What is it that they're looking for? As we all said from the beginning, reassess. What's my P&L? What's going on? What are they liking? What are they not liking? And really understanding who you are. Just your conversation about Chili's, and then going off the rails, and then who am I? And that it's always stay true to who you are. Just because somebody else is doing something that works for them doesn't mean that's going to work for you. So I think it's being true to your own brand and understanding what your brand is.
I just want to end on don't discredit, or a good other resource to understand where your brand is not discrediting reviews. I know we constantly hate that people rant about restaurants on Yelp or Google, but sometimes people are complaining to complain, but sometimes they have real value in what they're saying, and that's a great place if you read through your reviews. Sometimes I can see trends like, man, that dish is always dry because people have said it multiple times, or John is doing a really great job at the bar because everybody talks really great about John. So it can be a great way to learn positive things about your space and negative things, and try and attack some of those operational things that, to your point, we can get them through the door, but only you can keep them and turn them into regulars. And that is where the money is at, is repeat loyalty guests. And that all happens in the operations space.
It doesn't. Unfortunately, technology-wise, we all think there's value in building a database, and there is. But be a restaurateur. You're not out there to build a database. You're out there to build a following, a loyal following, and you're going to do that by that experience that you deliver and connecting with your guests at your restaurant.
Much for your attention. Each one of the presenters is not in a hurry. They told me beforehand they will be available, so if some of you have something on your mind, you want to talk a little bit more in depth, they will be around. Please ask each or all their questions. Thank you very much, Dawn, David, Kim. Wonderful topic. Thank you very much for coming.